Welcome to Seeking Alpha's CEO Interviews. Quality of leadership is a decisive factor in stock performance, so we provide in-depth interviews with the best and brightest CEOs in the public markets. We publish limited excerpts from our interviews on social media platforms and the full interviews at seekingalpha.com and in the highly rated Seeking Alpha mobile app. To find the full interviews, open seekingalpha.com or the Seeking Alpha mobile app and search for the phrase CEO Interviews, or simply type a stock ticker into the search box.
I'm here with Ian Siegel, co-founder and CEO of ZipRecruiter, which is going public today, May 26th, on the New York Stock Exchange via a direct listing. And the reference price is $18 a share. Congratulations, Ian. Very big day for you. Absolutely. Well, so there's many workforce and workplace trends as we emerge from the pandemic to discuss. You are clearly an expert on that, but wanted to touch on some financials first. So in 2019, which feels like a lifetime ago, you had 430 million in revenue with a slight loss of about 6 million. 2020, you had a little less revenue, 418 million, but you had a net income of 86 million. So during the pandemic, economic downturn, you turned a profit. What factors contributed to that?
Well, first off, thank you for having me on the show. And I think the pandemic was a once in a lifetime event that affected a lot of businesses in a variety of ways. But for ZipRecruiter, obviously the job market experienced a significant COVID shock, and we could see it in our data even before WHO declared a pandemic, sports leagues shut down, and all travel ceased in the United States. Right. So we took rapid action to cut our costs, and that was both in the form of a reduction in force, and we turned marketing down. But we learned an incredibly valuable lesson when we did that, which was that we had woven ourselves into the fabric of American business consciousness, that when they think about hiring somebody, they just come to ZipRecruiter. Because even though marketing was turned down, not only did new customers keep coming, but old customers kept coming and reactivating their accounts. And so we've been able to ride the recovery really from the middle of last year till today. And we are a much better business for it because we know how strong our brand is.
That's great. That's great. And if you haven't used ZipRecruiter, you've seen the ads. So that's right. You definitely have a lot of brand awareness. That is very true. So you founded the company in 2010. You have about 750 employees here in the United States, Canada, the UK, Israel, I believe. So you've been around a decade. Why list now?
I think the real answer to that is we feel so confident about bringing innovation to this category because we're really doing things differently. I mean, when you look at what the introduction of these advanced matching approaches, which everybody calls artificial intelligence, do to the category. 4 years ago on ZipRecruiter, it took 39 days to fill a job. Today, it's down to 16 days. Wow. So this technology is making seismic impact on the job category itself. And we, at this point, are committed to investing further over the long term. And we want to build a base of shareholders who share that long-term vision with us. And I think we couldn't be more excited to be going public today, but it's a fun day, but it's just one more fun day because there's going to be so many fun days in the future.
That's fantastic. How do you differentiate, from say a LinkedIn or, I also know your network spans lots of job boards. So I'd like for you to talk about that too. I mean, you have your tentacles way out.
I think the original premise of ZipRecruiter still holds true, which is businesses have this question of where should we post our jobs? And the answer is everywhere. ZipRecruiter basically turns the internet into one giant job board. We'll take any job you have and we'll distribute it to job boards, aggregators, social networks, search engines, talent communities, resume sites, anywhere job seekers might be, we'll put your job. But that's just where we start, because where our real innovation came in was the introduction of advanced artificial intelligence algorithms to play the role of active matchmaker. And what that means in literal terms is that if you're a job seeker, instead of you searching, we'll curate specific opportunities for which you're a great fit that you definitely don't want to miss. And if you're an employer, as soon as you post your job, we'll present you a list of potential candidates that you get to pick from who you're going to directly recruit. And if there's one thing that's true, it's that job seekers hate applying to jobs, but they love getting recruited. So this elevated experience is creating improved outcomes, which is why we're the #1 rated hiring site on G2 Crowd for employers. And for the past 4 years, we've been the #1 rated job seeker search app on both iOS and Android.
That is terrific. Now, I know in one of your promotional videos, you have an attorney who talks about Phil the recruiter. You get emails from Phil. Phil is not a human. He has human qualities, but he's actually a product of artificial intelligence. Can you explain that to us?
Well, one of the goals we have at ZipRecruiter is making the whole job search process feel more human. And there's a number of ways that manifests. I mean, the #1 frustration job seekers have is they apply to jobs and they never hear anything back. Well, on ZipRecruiter, when you apply, we give you a notice when the employer either reads your resume or gives you a rating. It's just one way we try to make things feel more organic and more human. Phil, when we talk about curating specific opportunities for you, is an AI personality that presents like a real human, like someone who cares. And Phil does care because Phil learns. Phil gets smarter over time, and Phil gets better and better at finding just right opportunities for you, which he will curate for you so that you never miss a great opportunity again.
That's incredible. So I mentioned that we were going to talk about some workforce and some workplace trends. So in your own SEC documents, I believe you've said on any given day or any given year, on average, about 40 million people in this country alone are looking for jobs. Prudential has a new report out as of March on the pulse of the American worker. And about 26% of those people who were surveyed said they would like to change jobs once the threat of the pandemic decreases, which is kind of happening. Explain for us the dynamic, and when you have so many people after a year of remote work, maybe engaged, maybe not, but now maybe flooding the market, and then you also have companies either trying to recoup losses or, like yourself, take advantage of, say, e-commerce or what have you. What's that dynamic like, and how are you fitting into that dynamic? How are you harnessing that dynamic?
Well, there's two very different stories playing out in the job market recovery. For employers, the COVID is over and employer hiring is white hot. This is the best time in my entire 10 years at ZipRecruiter that if you're a job seeker looking for work, to go find a job. That said, job seekers are showing reluctance. There's 16 million people who are either unemployed or underemployed as a result of COVID. And there are millions of people who are currently employed who in a normal, healthy economy would have been changing jobs over the past 12 months, but have not just been sheltering in place at home, they've been sheltering in place at work. There is massive, unprecedented pent-up demand, and that is going to crash onto the job market probably in the latter half of this year and the first part of next year. So if you're going to go look for a job, now is the time to do it before all that competition emerges. But it's going to be really interesting to see how much job seeker activity there is when the vaccination rate reaches a critical herd immunity threshold, schools reopen, and stimulus extensions expire.
Right. Wow. Thank you for that. So you have won awards from a company called Comparably, which is a data monitoring, corporate culture monitoring company. So you yourself have been saluted as a CEO, and you've also been recognized for corporate culture and diversity. And as we know, the complexion of America is changing. By 2043, we will be majority people of color. And in order to be relevant, companies need diverse talent now and then increasingly into the future. Do you have a system in place to help companies hire the best talent and also diverse talent?
Well, one of the things that's true is unconscious bias is 100% prevalent in every business. It's complete and perfect in how widespread it is. Most individuals and most companies don't realize how that bias affects their hiring process. And one of the really awesome things about using AI is you get to choose what information you feed it. So you you make decisions like, am I going to give it name? Am I going to give it area code? Am I going to give it interests and hobbies? And what you can do with AI is you can teach the software to make matches just on the basis of competencies and talents. And that is a first in the job industry. So we are on the path to a better, more unbiased, and more diverse hiring process. There's still a lot of work left to do, but I'm really excited about what this technology does, because instead of trying to retrain everyone in America of what their own personal unconscious bias is, we're using software to just present candidates that they should be considering, regardless of what their bias might be.
Great, great, fantastic. So in terms of corporate culture and the remote nature of work, like you said, some, companies are returning to the office in varying degrees. A minority of Americans wants to go back to the office 5 days a week. I mean, most people seem to want to stay home at least part of the time. Is this putting pressure on employers? The executives I've talked to, they want people back at work. On the other hand, a remote approach to work means you could expand your talent base exponentially. So what dynamic are you seeing in that regard?
Well, we all participated in a grand social experiment over the past 12 months together, and the consensus view among job seekers is that they like remote work and they want it to play either a part or be their full-time reality even after the pandemic ends. And there are going to be some savvy employers who take advantage of that. And this presents an enormous challenge for those employers who want to compel everyone to come back to the office, because it's going to be a recruiting disadvantage. It's also interesting because of the challenge it presents to the recruiting industry. The entire recruiting industry, from job sites to staffing firms to recruiting agencies, have all been built around a geographic location.
Right.
And if you suddenly say to them, I need you to recruit nationwide, they don't have the technology, they don't have the facilities, and they don't have the personnel. So you're going to wind up in this novel situation where the market has a demand that none of the current service providers are equipped to provide. It's going to be very interesting to see what kind of innovation and change happens in the recruiting industry over the next 2 years.
So to your point, and your own SEC filings indicate that, again, the order of magnitude when you say, let's go from, Tulsa, Oklahoma to a nationwide job search, and the person could work in, Phoenix. So how does a recruiter, though, using your service, manage that volume? I mean, is that going to add stress to, say, clients, or how can you help them manage that volume?
I think the reality is that the only way you're going to be able to effectively and efficiently do nationwide searches is by using technology like ZipRecruiter, because our AI is really smart and it keeps getting smarter, and it doesn't really care about geographic boundaries. It has the ability to look at candidates in a limited geographic area or the entire country, pick the very best ones, and surgically notify them of a job that's just gone online, or surgically present them to an employer so they can go directly recruit those candidates. If you just take a job and you post it in 100 markets, you'll get 10,000 applicants. That's no good for either side of the job market.
Right. So you really are kind of a consolidator in a way. Are you almost the Expedia of recruiting? I mean, you're helping people find the right job as opposed to maybe the right flight.
I think we're at this moment, this inflection point in the recruiting category where technology is offering a grand leap forward in terms of the capabilities of what an individual can do from a recruiting standpoint. And when you think about the advantages, not just in the liquidity of talent, that if I'm looking for a role and I'm willing to source nationwide, how many more candidates I get to consider, but also theoretically the economics of that. Because if I'm in New York or California and I'm hiring, say, an engineer who's somewhere in the middle of the country, I can probably pay middle of the country salaries instead of Silicon Valley salaries. And that's going to be a huge advantage for businesses that choose to exploit it.
So you mentioned an engineer. What are the hottest jobs that you're seeing as we're emerging from the pandemic? Do you have any kind of macro trends for us?
I mean, here's the truth. Every job category is white hot right now. And you have entire job categories that were basically obliterated by COVID. So it's things like travel and hospitality or anything tourism related or live events. All of these businesses are staffing all the way back up. So you have at every level of the job market, from entry all the way to very senior level roles, widespread hiring in all 40 job categories that we track. I'm not kidding when I say this is the best time I have ever seen for a job seeker to go look for work.
My goodness. So since you also did receive an award for corporate culture, your own employees anonymously, you answered some questions. What makes a good inclusive corporate culture today?
Well, I give a speech to every new employee who starts here, and I say, you're going to look around this company and you're going to think, wow, they've really got it together. They have beautiful offices. They're in multiple countries. There's AstroTurf on the kitchen floor. That's a nice detail. But none of that is culture. For me, culture is only one thing, and that's you feeling safe speaking up to anyone at any time so that you feel like you can be your authentic self and that your voice can be heard. That culture of safety, that encouraging, let's have respect for version one idea is something that I try to infect people with the first day they started ZipRecruiter. And it's something that we're very conscious of and very protective of.
So based on your magnanimous comments about what an inclusive corporate culture looks like, what is your leadership style, and who is Ian Siegel as a leader?
Well, I believe there's two types of leaders. There's leaders you work for, and there's leaders you work with. And, you know, we started as 4 guys sitting around a kitchen table, and we've grown the company organically for many years. And so I'm definitely in the camp of a leader you're going to work with. I'm curious about who you are. I'm curious about how you think about the work you're doing. And I want to make sure you understand why that work is important. So I will walk around and talk to you, and I like to think I will work with you. There is no right style of leadership. I say that the 2 groups of people I never judge are other parents and other CEOs, because both jobs are too hard. That just happens to be the way I do it and how I like to lead.
That's great. Well, Ian, congratulations on the positive momentum at your company, and we'll be looking for more news from your company in the weeks and months ahead. So thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.